And we are live.
Well, welcome everyone to Connected Learning TV. This is the third webinar in a month-long series titled Cities of Learning 2014, Unique Personalized Pathways to Success. My name is Dustin Stiver, and I'm a program officer with the Sprout Fund here in Pittsburgh, and we help steward something called the Kids in Creativity Network. And I'll be your host for today. Throughout May, we're getting some inside early looks at 4 cities that are launching City of Learning programs this summer. But for those of you who may be hearing about Cities of Learning for the first time, City of Learning is a part of a nationwide movement to leverage community and government resources to create new links between in-school and out-of-school learning throughout the summer and beyond. The focus of the program is really to engage cities to open doors across neighborhoods to ensure that all youth have access to creative academic opportunities in libraries and museums and parks and other institutions, as well as exciting learning opportunities online. The City of Learning particularly is interested in exploring the notion of digital badges as well. And digital badges are a sort of a sophisticated new tool that can help document, capture, and recognize learning wherever it happens, sort of in or out of school or over the summer. City of Learning began in Chicago last year in 2013, and this year several other cities are joining the movement. In addition to Pittsburgh, there's also Columbus, Dallas, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. So spread out all over the United States. Today we'll be chatting with some of my colleagues here in Pittsburgh through our City of Learning. But before we dive into the chat, let's go over a couple of quick technical details. So for those of you who are watching live right now, we welcome your comments either via the COL 2014 hashtag on Twitter or the Google Plus event page, and we'll look for your questions and bring them into the conversation as we can. And we're also chatting throughout the month in the Connected Learning Google Plus community, and using the same COL 2014 hashtag on Google+. So look for us there, and we look forward to interacting with you over the next hour or so. So with that, let's introduce our guests, and I'll ask you all to sort of briefly say who you are and who you work for or with, and then we'll jump into a broader conversation. So perhaps we can start on my left with Renee Martinez.
Hello, can you hear me now? Hi, I'm Renee Martinez. I am the program coordinator for the Remake Learning Digital Core here in Pittsburgh, part of the Summer of Learning badging kickoff.
Cool, thanks. Corey?
Hi everybody, I'm Corey Wittig. I'm the Digital Learning Librarian for Carnegie Library at Pittsburgh. We're also one of the IMLS MacArthur Learning Labs and Libraries and Museums cohort from the last couple of years, and we're taking part in badging via Cities of Learning this summer.
Go ahead, Khalif.
Hi, my name is Khalif Ali. I'm the program manager for the Badges for Learning program here at Sprout, and I'm very excited to be here.
Hi, my name is Rachel Shepard, and I manage the Youth and Media Department at a Pittsburgh nonprofit called Steeltown Entertainment Project.
Cool. Well, my thanks to all of you for being here today and chatting with us. Maybe we can start with Khalif. I turn to you, and can you give us an overview of how Pittsburgh's participating in the City of Learning campaign?
Sure. So I think it's great that you preface by describing the Cities of Learning as movements with a commitment to learning through access, through recognition, and through connecting learning in a meaningful way throughout the city of Pittsburgh. Our initial foray into digital badges is the Badges for Summer Learning program, which we have recruited 20 organizations who are very interested in badging their established summer learning experiences. We've worked and we're working closely with the Digital Core, which Ani Martinez can talk a little bit more about, as well as the Summer Dreamers Academy, which is connected to Pittsburgh Public Schools. And we have two partners with us, in Corey and Rachel, who will also be participating in the Badges for Summer Learning programs.
So let's jump into that a little bit and see how all of you are participating in the project. So Ani, do you want to go first? Tell us what the Digital Core is and how you plan to participate in the City of Learning this summer.
Yeah, definitely. So the Digital Core is a program designed to provide professional and mentorship development for interested community members. We get everyone from librarians to technologists who want to give their time and work with teens and tweens in out-of-school time programs. So we train them how to use tools like Scratch and WebMaker, which is a Mozilla suite of apps, and a physical computing controller called the Hummingbird Kit. It was locally designed at CMU and has gone on to become a really great independent company called BirdBrain Technologies. And so we work with youth and we introduce them to these digital literacy concepts. One thing that badging can be really essential for us is creating assessment tools. So it will be a great way to chart our data of the progress for youth. And it's also a great way for core members to reflect on their work and their progress in the program, to have a framework where you can say, okay, these are my assessment tools, these are my pathways, and then these are resources that I can share with the kids that I'm working with, is super beneficial. And then it's also great for the host sites because they can say this is the work that our program is moving towards, and this is something that we can definitely do on our own, and we have a framework to think about that. So it creates sustainability.
Cool, thanks. Corey, how about you? How's the library planning to get involved this summer?
Yeah, so the labs at CLP, which is the Learning Lab program that I manage, we started out, we're at 3 libraries every week right now, but it's a 19 library system. So even though we've been doing a lot of really strong work around those locations the last couple of years, there's still, you know, a bunch of the city that we don't hit. So we're trying to figure out how to get out to all those locations. And it dovetails really nicely with what Ani's doing, because 4 of our libraries where the labs doesn't happen weekly are digital core sites. So before we can get out there with what we're calling labs on location, where we rotate and hit all those branches, Ani's helping us build up everyone's capacity there and kind of get teens primed for that kind of experience. So in order to sort of make the most of this design opportunity and work with the badges, we're focusing on the 3 sites where we program weekly, our East Liberty Library, our main library, the Oakland neighborhood, and the Allegheny Library on the north side, as well as the digital core sites. So we are going to badge some special summer programming that we're doing with some partners from around the community to really take on that connected learning idea. Something we do pretty commonly in the summer, we bring in these partners. Try to fold that in through the year too, but it's really focused on the summer. So from Tech Shop, Pittsburgh, a great local group called Hip Hop Unlock, the Mattress Factory Museum, and Pittsburgh Filmmakers Youth Media. We're going to bring all of them in and kind of badge the experiences there throughout the summer.
Cool, thanks. How about you, Rachel? What's going on at Steeltown?
Oh, so many things are going on at Steeltown. So I think for badging, this summer we work with middle school and high school students throughout the year in school, after school, in school and after school settings, and we've kind of been, you know, probably as is the case with many of you, we get students who are really, really into filmmaking, and some who think it's cool, but it's not really for them. This summer we've kind of been pulling the kids who really want to take it to the next level, and we've hired them to be our essentially our team of filmmakers, and we're going out and we're partnering also with a lot of different organizations for this. But we're actually creating the digital content for a few different organizations. And we're starting with an organization called Amachi Pittsburgh, and we're creating like a marketing video, which the goal is for it to be a really professional level quality piece. And we're hoping to, prove that teens can actually, it's youth-led, they can actually kind of take the lead and really create something that's of a professional quality. We're going to badge some kind of intro to filmmaking skills. And Ani, you mentioned this. I think what's been most helpful for us is, we tend to kind of, and I think a lot of people do this, you're programming, you're kind of into it, and you get into the mindset of like, go, go, go. And this has really forced us to step back and actually think about, well, what are the skills that we are really actually trying to convey, and what do we want people to learn? And that's been really helpful to outline, like, oh, well, okay, actually this is what goes into an interview badge, or whatever the case may be. So this, I'm really excited to kind of get more into this and be more organized and structured and have an assessment tool at the end of the summer.
Yeah, so when the Sprout Fund started thinking about how to help steward the City of Learning in Pittsburgh this summer, we wanted to make it as open of a process as we could. So we knew we wanted to work with the City of Pittsburgh's, the Pittsburgh Public Schools summer program called Summer Dreamers to bring them into the mix. And we knew we wanted to work with the Digital Core as a program that we help steward, that touches a lot of different after-school sites around the city, but also wanted to bring in another set of groups through an open process to help fill it out a little bit. And Steeltown Entertainment and the Labs are two of those groups, but there are something on the order of 18 other organizations this summer that are also going to be going through a process of learning about digital badges and building digital badges and sort of implementing them in their programs throughout the next few months. So Khalif, can you talk a little bit more about some of the other groups that are part of this that aren't on the call today?
Sure. We have the Women and Girls Foundation. They have a program called GirlGov, in which they take teenage girls from throughout the city of Pittsburgh who are interested in potentially running for office or being employed in the public sector in some meaningful way. And they go through a leadership development process, as well as meet in Harrisburg and in Washington, D.C. with public officials who are in office and who give them a firsthand understanding of what it means to work in the public sector, to be in public office, and they subsequently make videos, YouTube videos regarding their experiences and their aspirations with regard to the public sector. We also have the Hill District Consensus Group, which was founded by Carl Redwood, who is a longtime community organizer here in the city of Pittsburgh. It is also has a leadership development component, but more so, they focus on teaching teenagers how to convene residents around a particular issue of concern in their respective community. In this case, the Hill, but they're taking teenagers from throughout the city of Pittsburgh to teach them these skills and issue these badges.
Yeah, so we've got all kinds of different projects are going to be a part of this. Everything from filmmaking and sort of digital learning in libraries to advocacy, like Khalif was just talking about. Generally in Pittsburgh, we try to support projects that are about a lot of different topics, but digital learning is right near the top. The maker movement, we have some projects that are interested in making, and also sort of the idea of STEAM, adding the arts to math and engineering and science education. But youth media making ends up being a big piece of what we're doing here too. So a lot of different groups are jumping in on this summer. And a general question for the group then is, what do you think is the value of being part of a larger campaign like this, like City of Learning? Because Pittsburgh's a medium-sized city. We have a lot of different organizations, and some folks are already working together. But we've seen the value of collaboration the last few years through our work with the Kids and Creativity Network. So I'm just wondering, from your perspective, how do you see the City of Learning campaign as a way to help raise awareness of connected learning and learning that's happening all across the city? Anybody can jump in on that.
Okay, Dustin, I'll go. So, the library itself, we like to talk about the library as a community anchor. We're spread out all around the city. But through learning about connected learning these last couple of years and just trying to figure out how to create a program like the labs at CLP, we can't kind of stockpile or silo this programming in our walls. We want to use our role as librarians to facilitate these connections for kids all around the city, and we're in a really good position to do that just by being pretty spread out all around town. So this to me is a natural connection to speak to what Kids and Creativity has been doing, what Sprout's all about, and all the network connections that have been being made. For a good example is when we started the labs, and the actual launch was September 2012. We wanted to jump right into badging, and we kind of tried and realized how much support is needed there. We were kind of doing just like a physical badges thing with buttons, because teenagers in our programs, that's a teen-only program, are never tired of making buttons, and just figured we could kind of create these pathways that would be pretty clear and just like a nice kind of reward for going through the programming and something to show. But it just hit so many roadblocks, and we're kind of hoping something like this would come down the pike, and so just really excited to be able to have this piece. I feel like a lot of the out-of-school programming especially is figuring out how to speak to these outcomes, and that's easy in the in-school environment in a way, because it's a graded thing, and like that's how school works. But we're trying to figure out the best ways to communicate those outcomes here, and as Ani said, the badges can be a really big part of that, in a way of just kind of folding it in naturally by tracking what's happening and getting the teens buy-in like that. So for me, one, it's just a way to show what comes out of a programming with our partners in the space, as well as the original programming that our mentors design, and just whatever the teens are taking on themselves. Our workshops are designed to kind of build these skills, but then we have open time, which is where the teens really just like take what they're getting in the context of those workshops and run with that. So though we're focusing on badging these particular programs this summer, I think it's going to be a really good way to just figure out how best to do this going forward, and just speak to whatever skills teens are picking up in our space. And we do try to speak to everything from maker stuff to filmmaking, graphic design, etc., all the digital stuff. So yeah, I'm just really excited to use this as an entry point to really badge well and make sure we're doing it citywide kind of consistently, and everyone's kind of working on it in the context of one big project.
I have a quick thought on, I don't know, I was really excited when I found out that this was happening in Pittsburgh. For those of us who work in Pittsburgh, you kind of know it's a small city. You seem to kind of cross paths with everyone at some point. I actually think it's a really good, like a case study for getting something like badging together. When I think about a place like New York, where there's so much going on and it's so exciting, but there's just so much, it kind of seems like, how can everything connect? In Pittsburgh, we're doing filmmaking. I know the other places that are doing filmmaking. We can work together to kind of establish a system. You know the people who are doing similar things. And when I was trying to wrap my head around badging in the beginning, one of my concerns was, well, if everyone's developing their own badges and everyone has their own thing, their own stamp, it kind of loses meaning. Like it's like flooding a system, But I think when you can actually work together in a manageable size with a manageable group, you can develop something that is digestible and consistent. So I don't know. I think Pittsburgh's a really good place to try something like this.
Yeah, we're really excited. I guess I should also say we're still kind of in the quiet phase of City of Learning. We haven't actually had our public launch yet. That's coming up on June 10th, so not too far from now. But in advance of that, we're working with this cohort of projects to help them get a leg up on developing some badges themselves and sort of beginning to really understand the digital badging process, so that when the launch comes around, we'll have some badges sort of ready to go. And in fact, we actually have a workshop that we're leading tomorrow about badge design, and maybe Khalif, you can talk a little bit about sort of what that entails as we kind of ramp up to the June 10th launch.
Okay. So at one of the things that I didn't mention is that there was an announcement, there was an all-call at our Kids and Creativity networking meeting about a month ago that stated that we were interested in receiving applications or proposals for organizations that wanted to badge their summer learning program. So we accepted 20 of those applications, and tomorrow we will be going through what's referred to as a badge design workshop with those organizations to help them to transition their curriculum into a digital badge at some point. One of the things that we've asked is that we're working with Mozilla Badge Kit, and one of the things that we've asked the 20 recipients is to complete the first step of the badge design process, which really talks about the learning outcomes, and what Rachel was referring to really helps programs that haven't already really thought about it to understand exactly what is being learned in their space and what's being shared in their space. So it's an opportunity for badges to be developed and transitioned from the curriculum that the summer learning programs currently have.
And the hope is that through being pretty diligent this summer with a smaller set of projects, we'll learn a lot more about how digital badging is working sort of out in the wild. And as we begin to develop sort of the technical capacity of projects and organizations that we work with, as well as the other competencies that are required to give good badges, we'll be in a place to continue to roll out badges across the city in a really significant way, come the fall. And I think, Rachel hit on it, like the extent to which a city is able to connect the learning pathways from filmmaking organization to filmmaking organization, or from digital learning experience to digital learning experience, like the more that we can do that across Pittsburgh, the better it's going to be for the students here in this city. And I think that's really an embodiment of connected learning and that principle. We've seen that through the digital core, and we see that through the work of the labs, and even the way that those two groups are working together. And I think we're going to see a lot of that this summer too. So we've talked a lot about badges, but what do you guys think are some specific ways? Like how are badges amplifying the learning that's taking place in this summer across Pittsburgh? Like the library has had summer programs for a long time, and Steeltown has been doing filmmaking workshops for a while. Like how do badges kind of level up the learning that's happening in those environments already?
I would say, part of it is, I sort of, I guess, mentioned this before, but that tracking or outcomes thing, which is really handy on the back end for staff, and to share out to funders or just share up the ladder and all of that kind of thing for sure. But also is just super empowering for the youth that we serve, and is just a way. We're actually trying to tie it to equipment checkouts, and that seems to be something that we've got the process rolling for already, and just kind of actually designing these badges will make that a reality. But so say a teenager comes here to the library at East Liberty and attends 5 different labs, combination of workshops and open lab time. They get a lab's regular badge. From that point, then they are identified as being able to get these other badges that would allow them to check out equipment. So there could be, and this is something we'll kind of take on more after we badge our summer stuff and make sure we're kind of going about it the right way. But they would learn what we'd say was necessary to take out one of our DSLRs for the day. It's great to be able to learn this stuff in the context of the library, but you can only take so many photos in the library that it's going to really interest you as like a burgeoning photographer. So if you get the chance through this program to then take that camera outside and, through kind of going through the badging process, we feel comfortable letting you walk out of the building with something like this, and the teens feel like, good about that responsibility being passed on to them, and have, everything we do is free, and that's something I'm very passionate about as being a public librarian. So, creating this infrastructure both, kind of assuages the concerns on, the internal side, and then also really kind of, is that level up, or that opportunity to really show, that we've got this trust and we really want to empower these creative projects that they're taking on. So it begins in the context of, our workshops are kind of designed pieces on this end, but then it has really an unlimited potential for, what that badge can mean. And also, then talking about going between organizations, maybe through like the film stuff we do and the film stuff Rachel does, that, there's going to be some give and take there, that if someone goes between our programs, we would know, they learned that we agree these are like the important skills or something, and, that they don't have to start from scratch when they show up at Steeltown, or someone from Steeltown comes to the labs and we say, of course, you've done this already. And so, we don't have to kind of put them back. We get to already acknowledge that we know where they're at and move forward with them.
Summer is also a really important time to work with your students or whatever participants are going to your workshops to sort of test where the interest level is lying too. And that's a really important piece of data that badging can provide for us, because you can talk to your students all day long, but having them take the effort to apply, or talking to them about the things that they're interested in applying for, is really critical for thinking about the year holistically.
I have one thing to add to that, which is, certainly, like Corey said, building this structure in our own organization, I think, will make us a much stronger organization in the end, because we're being forced to really think critically about each step that goes into each skill. But I also think that process will really empower the teens, because, for something like making a movie, which everyone, when you're a teen, or really anyone, you think, oh, that sounds really cool. But there's no real sense of like how to get from point A to point B, which is a finished product, which actually is a ton of work. And there are so many steps. So to actually kind of see that pathway, I think, is incredibly helpful for a kid to be able to see, okay, to actually get the movie, here are the steps I need to take. And I think that'll be really empowering to them too.
Yeah, that's really true of, I think, all digital media learning. I mean, film, code. It's really difficult to say to a tween that when you create a document in a text file, it will one day look like an awesome Twitter page. So I totally agree.
I also think that one of the important things about badging is that it really says that there is learning that occurs in many different spaces and in many different contexts. And there's an opportunity for it to be recognized, and so there's an opportunity for it to have value to not only the earner but to the issuer, or in this case, the organizations that are creating this environment which learning is taking place. So I think it really highlights the fact that there's so much going on in the city of Pittsburgh and other cities throughout the country, and this is a golden opportunity for us to be able to capture it, and also share it in a way that there's access, there's a broad access to these learning opportunities.
Yeah, that's one of the best and most appealing things about the City of Learning campaign for me, is that it's easy to sort of stick in your silo, and Pittsburgh's a pretty collegial and close city, but there's a real opportunity here to learn from what's happening in places like Dallas and LA and Chicago, and with so many people rolling out programs over the summer, we're going to learn a lot really quickly, and being a part of groups like the Connected Learning Alliance are going to help share that information around from city to city more quickly than we may have been able to do in the past. And so it's a good opportunity for for us to be a part of a larger national campaign, and also to highlight and showcase some of the remarkable work that's happening here in our city. You know, the badging ecosystem is interesting because it's being developed all around us, and it's happening right now. And so as we think about bringing in folks like the formal school system, we need to do a good job right now of being advocates for digital badges and for their power and their potential. And we're looking forward this summer to, you know, going through a pretty diligent pilot to understand how badges are working and how they're not working. Because we need to build interest from people who want to issue badges, and we need to build interest from people who want to earn them, and then people who also want to accept them or endorse them. You've got to sort of audiences at once. And I think the coordinated effort that we have going on this summer is a good step in that direction. So maybe if there's any comments on that, feel free. Otherwise, I guess I'm interested in what all of you are hoping to learn this summer by going through this process. Are there particular things that you don't know now that you really hope to be able to discover, you know, by the end of the summer? And if so, you know, what are those things?
I'd say, you know, I really feel pretty confident that the badging will be, you know, a driving force for teens to sort of kind of connect with our workshops and our learning opportunities in kind of like a, you know, a way that follows their interests and is also kind of like linear. You know, but I guess it's yet to be seen. We need to really like test it out, and that's what this is going to be about. Is, you know, is the badging going to work the way that we hope? And I really, you know, we talk to teens about this. We see what kind of, you know, things they want to see at the library, and it just feels like a natural fit that, you know, having some actual system on the informal side to track that is going to be powerful, and, you know, we'll go back to schools and hopefully mean something there as well. But, you know, I mean, at the same time, like you know, the proof's in the pudding, or, you know, that kind of thing, and I just really want to kind of get out there and give it a test drive and see, you know, what we can kind of hammer out this summer, and, you know, what that will say, you know, about our network and about the city, and about, you know, see too how youth move between our programs. I think that's going to be really interesting to see, like, what kind of give and take there is. I mean, being a librarian, like, you'll show up at a different branch and a kid will be across town at some library that you didn't know they like had any access to, and the same thing you know, kids go to like Manchester Craftsman's Guild and show up at the Oakland Library or something like that. I think you know, seeing what kind of movement the teens have and what kind of motivation this kind of spurs on is going to be really interesting to me.
Other thoughts?
So
I can say
summer is really the
go ahead,
hustle
sorry.
time. No, that's okay. My mic wouldn't unmute. I was just going to say summer is a really busy time for most informal educators with summer camps and whatnot, and so I'm really curious to see how, like, what kind of inventive strategies come out from the teachers and mentors who are in these classrooms and in these camps, and how they manage to find that time for that assessment, and how, just to what extent the ease of badging assessments and pathways lead to them becoming stronger mentors, because they'll have that resource to share different sources for the same pathways of education or different pathways of education. So that's what I'm most curious to see happen this summer.
And I'm definitely interested in seeing what the reflections of the participants are with regard to actually receiving the earning and receiving badges. You know, one of the things that I've always been concerned with is the reception of badges with students, but I think this is something that will be well received. This is something that will help students to be re-engaged and enthusiastic about the learning process, because these are all things they participate in these programs because of their level of interest in these programs, and I think that's what we're really hoping to drive is interest-based learning.
Mm-hmm. Rachel, were you trying to jump in?
But yeah, I have, mine is actually very similar to Ani's. I'm really excited to see at the end of the summer, you know, what we're good at teaching and what we need to work on. And I think having, you know, this is going to force us to really measure that. Well, kids will have to demonstrate that they can do each thing that we say we're able to teach. And I think there will be, you know, some things where we'll learn, okay, we're not conveying this strongly enough. We're not getting this point across. And I think that'll be an amazing resource for us to become better teachers.
You know, one of the questions that's come in over the chat is about how do we extend you know, campaigns like the City of Learning beyond the summer. You know, what are ways to take, you know, how badges are being used in informal settings and connect them to formal institutions. Do you have plans or strategies or ideas about how to take some of this work that's beginning in the informal spaces in the summer and sort of translate that to either year-round programming or to connect up with schools?
Yes, you know, getting into formal education is all about having your ducks in a row, being really organized and being able to demonstrate exactly what your methods are and how, you know, why it is that you're the best at what it is that you do. And that's how you, I think, how you get formal ed and public ed's attention, is that you're amazing, right? And badging can help us do that.
And I also think you know, it begins with our June 10th event, in which we really launch the City of Learning and announce it to the city at large, to stakeholders and to agencies and persons of interest, because this is a new concept. This is, you know, it's a relatively raw concept when you're talking about here in Pittsburgh. And sharing this information and the benefits of this information and having those who are currently participating in the badge issuing process to share their experience, I think is valuable. I think inviting those stakeholders to what will eventually be a visioning process so that we can all take a look at what a badge issuing infrastructure or ecosystem would look like here in Pittsburgh is a part of what can connect the informal learning with the formal learning process. So that would include, you know, formal learning institutions as well as informal learning institutions coming together.
Yeah, I'm sorry. One thing. Khalif hit on it, but you know, Pittsburgh's approach here might be a little bit different than some of the other cities. So you know, he talked about this longer sort of working group process that's about to launch, and you know, there's a couple of different parts of the way that we're participating in City of Learning. Particularly, there's the pilot groups that we're working with right now and sort of rolling out the badge workshop tomorrow, and then badging those programs over the summer. We're having our big kickoff event on June 10th here in Pittsburgh, including some folks from around the country at places like the MacArthur Foundation and the Badge Alliance, etc. And then we're really going to start this longer, sort of more methodical process over the next year to build working groups to really understand the connections between institutions here in Pittsburgh. And that's going to take us a little while to pull those people together and to do the hard work that's required to understand what a badging ecosystem really looks like in our city. But we think it's worth it, and we're pleased to be able to do this work with the support of the Hillman Foundation here locally, and really think that it's going to give Pittsburgh a leg up as a place that has a lot of coordination and has had the conversations necessary to begin to bridge the gaps between the informal space and the formal space, and to build a really robust badging ecosystem across the city. So, Corey, I cut you off. Back to you.
Oh, no. Yeah, I mean, I was just going to mostly jump on what Ani said, kind of same thing here is I think as far as formal ed goes, you know, they'll take informal ed more seriously and loop their students into it in a more meaningful and kind of direct way when we show that, you know, the two kind of work together well and complement one another. And I think badging can really help that happen. At the same time, you know, the library's got to be available all the time. So this is something we do year-round, and we'll intend to continue on our programming. Summer is a time to kind of like do some extra special stuff and experiment, but you know, we fully intend to keep moving with this. So it's just going to be a really nice kind of like workshop time to, you know, to kick this off in a strong way, but we'll, you know, not stop at the end of the summer.
What about questions that you guys have for each other? Any of the panelists want to drop a question on the group?
I'd say I have a question for Rachel. I'm wondering what like specific way you guys are approaching your filmmaking badges. You know, for us, we're doing kind of like a skill. I think it's going to be like a skill for each of our summer workshops. Instead of video or film this year with filmmakers, we're doing photography, so it's going to be a little bit of a different thing. But I'm just, you know, film's my go-to thing, so I'm curious how you guys are, what you're thinking there.
Yeah, so we've been working a little bit with, after the conference in California in February for open badges, we've been working with an organization in New York that does really similar things. They do, they kind of have like a teen filmmaking crew, and they're also interested in badging. So I think what we've tried to do is really think about each step that goes into the filmmaking process. So, you know, you mentioned having like a badge to ensure that you can safely check out equipment. That was kind of where we started. Like a really basic camera maintenance badge was like the first thing, and kind of the easiest thing to outline, saying, you know, if you can demonstrate all these things, you can use our camera out of our offices. We trust you with it. You know how to take care of it. Beyond that, we kind of got a little more complicated into things like, well, there's interviewing. You know, maybe there's an interview badge. Maybe there's like an intro to lighting, because lighting can be really complicated, or it can be really, you know, there are basic things that you can do to better light a film, or it could be really complicated. You know, there's just a filmmaking, like a camera, can you use the camera correctly? But I think for the sake of the summer, we're trying to figure it out if it makes sense to do each of those skills, because some of those skills do correlate to other things. You know, if we do an interviewing badge and then, you know, a kid wants to go into a different organization, that might correlate really well. But for the sake of making sure everyone kind of gets an orientation, maybe we want to do a single intro to filmmaking badge. And I think we're still kind of in the process of thinking about that right now. We definitely want to outline each skill, and I think ideally we would want to have a badge for each skill. But we might want to have some kind of all-encompassing basic badge for this program this summer.
Yes, that's one of the things we're going to be talking about at the badge design workshop, are the different types of badges, which right now we're working with 3 different types. So skill-based badges, knowledge-based badges, and disposition-based badges, or habits of mind, or another way to think about dispositions. And there are ways to build competency-based badges for all 3 of those types. And I think that's one of the most important things that we want to stress this summer, is the importance of building badges based on competencies and not just on something like participation. And I think for us, it's also going to be important to sort of start small. I mean, the goal isn't necessarily to go out and issue 1 million badges just to say we did that. But to build some meaningful badges that organizations are able to begin issuing that actually impact kids and their learning and begin to have some value. Rachel, we'll talk about that more tomorrow. And the rest of you, you know, I think that thinking of them by type is actually a pretty useful way to consider the different sorts of badges that can be created. Ani, did you have a comment?
I had a kind of a question for Corey. So you're thinking about all of these skill-based badges for workshops that happen within the labs. That's right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really curious to see how they connect, right? Have you thought about, I don't know if this is a place where, I know we just made the comment about starting small, but what kind of meta information goes into making those badges? Is that something that you think the labs is ready to address yet? It's a lot. That would be a lot to take on. I was just curious if there's any sort of thought into that yet.
I think that's kind of what waylaid us in the past, and I'm hoping that the sort of support of the city doing it citywide is going to help us this time around. I think one thing for the badge design workshop is I'm going to want to figure out the best way to kind of like drill down and keep it focused so it doesn't get too out of control. But maybe what you're referring to in some ways is kind of what Rachel was saying too, is, you know, we do, you know, like music and audio stuff, and then, or like photography and video, you know, like there's lighting's going to be relevant to both photography and filmmaking. You know, audio stuff could be, you know, like there's a lot of crossover. And I remember seeing some information through UMedia last year during the launch in Chicago, you know, and these kind of pathways and how they can kind of like branch off to different spaces, like based on these skills that kind of are universal. So I'm hoping that there's a way to kind of connect through that, and that it wouldn't necessarily just be like lighting was only relevant to a pathway for film, but lighting was, you know, could branch off to film and photography and things like that. So, I mean, since we try to cover so much, with the idea being our mentors come to us with all types of skills and interests, and teams come to us with all types of interests, that we want to be able to speak to all that, but, you know, it has a way of getting really complex really fast. So, I mean, I think the goal would be to keep it basic and drill down, but then hopefully see the way that moving forward we could kind of branch out along those lines.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the digital core, it was really useful thinking about that, about those roots that come up and create those themes, I guess you could say, right? And that was one thing that was a tipping point for the core, was what is it that we're trying to do? And we're dealing with diverse communities, often with low access, and it was like, oh, well, duh, we're trying to help them become content producers and understand what that could even mean for them. So like these arches of storytelling, and there are lots of ways to come to the head of storytelling, albeit through Scratch or HTML or physical computing. So it's just really good to see that happening at the labs and at Steeltown also.
So I think Ani and Corey and Rachel, these are the exact types of conversations that are really useful to have at a citywide level, right? And these are the sorts of discussions that are required to build good competency-based badges, and to understand how other people are thinking about them, and to understand how, you know, the badges that are built can be interoperable. And so we'll continue that here locally, and I'm sure people are having similar kinds of conversations all around the country. But I think it's important to remember that, like, the heart of a badge is the content, or like the lesson plan that's behind it, right? Like the learning outcomes behind a badge are the most important thing. And it's not necessarily like how a badge looks, or something like a design element. And I think a lot of people who are beginning badge systems really want to jump to design and to looks and to feel, where there's actually a lot of hard work that's required to understand the learning lessons that are a part of a program, to map those to outcomes, to build the criteria, you know, to do the work that's required to actually issue meaningful badges. So we here in Pittsburgh are really excited to sort of jump into that this summer through City of Learning, and we want to continue to bring people sort of into the fold. So before some quick closing remarks, I'll ask one final question for all of you, which is, what strategies do you plan to employ to get people involved in the City of Learning campaign this summer? And anybody can jump in.
We have teaching kits for the digital core, so it's just updating how we implement those lesson plans. So that's been huge for us, and anyone can grab and go
no matter what the physical location is. So, you know, you can tweet at me and we can talk more about that later. It's not really what this conversation is, but it's a huge tool for the digital core.
You know, I think when you mention the designation City of Learning, you're essentially saying that the city is your campus and that there are opportunities for learning in every corner of the city. I think that's appealing to people. I think that's appealing to parents, and I think it's something that people can easily support and buy into. And so I don't think it's a hard sell in that sense. I think we have great institutions, including Carnegie Library, which is throughout the city of Pittsburgh, that offers us an opportunity to, or children throughout the city of Pittsburgh, access to learning in every neighborhood.
Yeah, and going off that, you know, we'll be at Summer Dreamers. You know, we've got the digital core programming. We'll have our regular labs locations and the regulars there who, you know, because we try to get so much feedback from them, a lot of the people who've been, the kids who've been with us this last year and a half, 2 years, you know, I've heard the talk about badging, so we've kind of engaged them in the idea. So I think, you know, there's already people kind of looking for that as well. But, you know, I mean, obviously that equipment checkout thing, I'm hoping we can tie in sooner rather than later, I think could be a really strong kind of motivational point for our learners.
I think for us this summer, you know, we're working with a relatively small selective group of kids, but hopefully the reach of the work that we do is pretty widespread. So, you know, we're starting by creating digital content for Amachi Pittsburgh, but, you know, that's just the first of many organizations. So I think, you know, and partly that'll be decided by the kids, you know, what organizations that we want to profile. It also is decided by the organizations. You know, we've been having conversations with many of them, but they're all doing something good for the region, I think, is kind of the hook. I don't know. I think we'll have a widespread with the work that we're doing that way.
Cool. So we're actually coming up quickly on the end of the hour. So I just want to offer the opportunity for any of the panelists to jump in with a closing comment. So final thoughts?
I'll go ahead and start. I just want to say that we, as a city learning designation, don't want to honor the work the learning that takes place both in formal and informal learning settings. We respect the learning that takes place in formal settings, and we honor that by providing a criteria for issuing badges in an informal setting, so that there can be consistency in the learning that takes place in informal settings just as it takes place in formal settings. So I'll leave it at that.
I'll jump on that too and say, I mean, that's what I'm really excited about. I think a lot of what's happening in teen services in public libraries around the country is, you know, kind of, you know, through knowledge of, you know, first Imago, through UMedia and Yumi Ito's research out of UC Irvine, and now Connected Learning, that just taking on this role of educator, and not that educator isn't teacher in the same way that a teacher in a formal setting is, but, you know, it's education nonetheless, and it's guidance, it's mentorship, and badging such a big part of helping us kind of, you know, make that mantle kind of make sense, or you know, a system through which to kind of guide that. We're really involved. We're in the second year of a strategic plan where we really want to get to the bottom of what outcomes are and what that means for us. And so, you know, I'm just really excited that badging is here, because it's something that I've been looking forward to the last couple of years, and can just see how it's going to, you know, really help move this work forward.
Anya or Rachel, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I clicked my face instead of the microphone, but yeah, I'm really excited to just be working on this summer. You know, we work with so many different kinds of schools and so many kids who come from different backgrounds, and I think this is a really exciting way, and there's so much potential for this to be a system that really measures skills that are learned in untraditional ways. You know, we work with a lot of kids who might not get the chance to go to college, but I'm really excited and hopeful that this could be a way for them to demonstrate the skills that they have that would be useful in the real world outside of school and in their jobs. So I'm excited for this, and thanks for letting me be part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I have very little more useful content to add on top of all those things, other than it's a lot of work that will lay a lot of track to make all of our jobs more clear in the future, which is going to be a huge aid in, I keep saying this, but just how we can be better at educating and communicating. And that's the most exciting thing to me, is to be able to do our jobs better and help more people that way.
Cool. My thanks to all of you for a really great conversation today. Thanks, Ani and Corey, Khalif, and Rachel. Thanks to the Connected Learning Alliance for helping to put this on. And by tomorrow, we should have a full recording of this webinar and some other curated content up on www.connectedlearning.tv. And you can share that with your networks once it's available, and we hope that you will. But this wraps up our third webinar of the month-long series. But that doesn't mean the conversations need to end. So I'd encourage you to keep the energy going by using the Twitter hashtag COL2014 and by getting involved in the ongoing conversations on the Connected Learning Google Plus community. And if you'd like to learn more about the upcoming Pittsburgh City of Learning launch, which is on June 10th, I'd invite you to visit the website of the Kids and Creativity Network, which is www.remakelearning.org. And join Connected Learning TV again tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, for an in-depth look at the goings-on in Dallas's City of Learning. So thanks to all of you, and we'll talk to you next time. Cheers.